All right, guys, this is my third stream of the day. I was just on my friend Tiff's stream talking about the Laura Owens case. Now I'm back to read some more of this deposition with you. If you missed the first couple of parts, I'll put a link to a playlist with those in the comments of this video sometime after the stream ends. But this is the full deposition transcript of Justin Baldoni, which was leaked yesterday by Blake Lively. Apparently unintentionally. Whether or not you believe it was unintentional or not, that's kind of up to you to decide. So, anyways, it's split into 2 days. So the Wayfair parties each had to go through 2 days of depositions. So we had day one, which is Stephanie Jones' attorneys questioning them. Because remember, Stephanie Jones, the former publicist of Justin Baldoni and the Wayfair parties, and the former boss of Jennifer Abel, she has a separate but related case against them. So Stephanie Jones' lawyers deposed Justin Baldoni on day one. And then on day two, Blake Lively's head attorney, lead attorney, whatever you want to call it, Michael Gottlieb, deposed him. So we've been going through Michael Gottlieb's questioning of Justin Baldoni, and I think we are finally going to finish off here in part 3. Now, tomorrow night, I'll probably start going over the Stephanie Jones attorney's questioning of Justin, because there's some stuff in there that might it's a little yikes. So let me show you exactly what I mean here. I think you'll understand once I show you these pages. This will be a sneak peek. I'm not going to go over these with you guys until tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon. I'm not sure yet. And then we'll get into tonight's pages. Share the screen real quick. Okay. Have you seen that online, at least, you become in certain circles kind of a hero or a figurehead of the MAGA movement? Which I honestly don't think is true. I really don't get that vibe. Like, most people who I know who are like staunchly MAGA, they're not paying attention to Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. Do you know how much shit is going on in this country right now? And the fact that Stephanie Jones attorneys are the ones to bring this up is just like kind of strange to me. But so they start badgering him about being a hero of the MAGA movement. And look, I'm politically moderate. I'm not a political channel. I'm not registered to either party. I'm very much an independent, moderate, politically. And I just don't want to bring that to my channel. I might do a separate channel to talk about political stuff. If anyone's like interested in that, maybe I'll think about it some more. But the thing is, it's not that they're aligning him with MAGA here. It's the reasoning and the context behind it. Like, I know some people who they're like MAGA people, and they're not like, I don't hate them. I don't think they're terrible people. I know people who are like very staunchly liberal and the opposite, and I don't think they're terrible people. So please don't interpret this as a political opinion at all. I don't care for politics on YouTube too much. Like I said, I'll think about it a little more if I ever want to comment on that kind of stuff. But anyways, she's saying you're kind of a hero or a figurehead of the MAGA movement. And it's not, again, like I said, that anyone's MAGA, right? It's that they are trying to present this in a context that makes him look bad by kind of eliciting this political issue. And I'm like, what the fuck does this even have to do with anything regarding Stephanie Jones? That seems like something that maybe Blake Lively's attorneys would bring up. But the thing is, if Blake Lively's attorneys brought it up, then Blake Lively would get blasted online by MAGA, MAGA people, MAGA publications, people who are like very, very MAGA friendly, would be blasting Blake Lively online. So I find it interesting that in the much less followed, lesser known Stephanie Jones case, that's where they've decided to bring up that he's a hero or figurehead of the MAGA movement. And I don't think that's an accident. I think like common sense dictates that Stephanie Jones and Blake Lively have been working together under the table this whole time. And I think that this was placed in day one of the deposition by Stephanie Jones attorneys for a purpose. Let's put it that way. So I'll go over the rest of this stuff, or I'll start going over it at least tomorrow. But I want to finish the rest of the Blake Lively pages, the deposition by Blake Lively's attorneys tonight. So let's do that. Okay. Pull it up real quick. I put a little ice in the coffee. It melted immediately. So we're going to try that tonight. I couldn't like go do anything about that, but I know people who give me lots of suggestions for what I could put in coffee that would be less unhealthy than like regular milk and sugar or whatever. I just don't have time for that until the weekend. So I haven't gotten anything else. So we're going to deal with whatever we got tonight. And I still got my little Bruce mug here. So if you can see them. Okay. So when we left off, they were talking about this comment that he made where he said the pants that Jenny Slate's, like the black leather pants, which were designed to, I'm sure, look sexy, like looked sexy on Jenny Slate or whatever. The one time they had an issue. So they're obsessively harping on this issue to make it sound like it happened repeatedly. So they're asking about it multiple times, and it's making it sound like it happened over and over again, but actually it happened one time, right? And then they're contextualizing it as if it's like a regular workplace, kind of. But this is a very different environment, very different expectations. Creatively, you're trying to create a picture that is sexy because it's a romantic book with lots of sex in it. It's like you can't really ignore that, right? And so if somebody says they're uncomfortable with that wording, fine. But if it never happens again, then why are you still complaining about it years later? You know what I mean? At that point, just move on. But okay. Again, this wasn't even about Blake Lively. It was about Jenny Slate. So he said, after he made that comment, oh, like, I didn't want it to come off in any way like it apparently did. So I was just, in that moment, it was just an instance where I said something that I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. And I just tried not to make it super awkward and made a bad joke at the end of it where he said, oh, I'm a married man. My wife's in the other room. It's fine. You know what I mean? So he was trying to say, like, I'm not trying to sexualize you, basically. My wife's right there. Like, that's the woman that I love. I don't want anything to do with sexualizing anyone else. I'm just, making a statement about the pants, right? And so he's trying to describe that as like, that's kind of how I am. I make awkward, bad jokes and stuff like that. If it's uncomfortable. One sec, guys. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, here Mike Gottlieb says, have you ever discussed, in the context of the events of this film and what happened on set, have you ever discussed trying to describe them as a component of neurodivergence? Which I think it's unfortunate that they're able to ask him about that, especially because Blake Lively, who was claiming emotional distress at the beginning of this, like, doesn't have to answer to her mental health issues, you know what I mean? She withdrew her intentional infliction of emotional distress claims because she didn't want to presumably present any records to back her claims, right? From like a therapist or a doctor or something like that. But here, Justin Baldoni, the defendant, is for some reason having to describe his issues in great detail. He's very composed as they go through this. He's not defensive. He doesn't get sarcastic or anything like that. So it's to me, it comes across very personable, especially as someone who has some of the same issues in my life. So he says, that being an instance, yes. And what is it about that instance that you believe is well, first of all, how are you neurodivergent? He says, I've been diagnosed with ADHD combined. Okay. He takes medications for that. Are any of them stimulants? He says, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure. Were you on that medication at the time of production of It Ends With Us? He says, I was not. Okay. Is that why you suggested to your publicist at one point trying to go on a podcast or a show of some kind and have a discussion about how what you have been accused of was because of your neurodivergence? So he there is trying to badger Justin into saying, like, well, she was accusing me of this, so I wanted to go on a show to basically explain that away, is kind of what they're getting at. That's the angle they're going with here, and you can kind of see that. The thing about the deposition here, is that this full deposition, if they were actually in settlement talks and the judge hadn't ruled on unsealing, this never should have made it to the light of day in the public, but it did. And it was going around social media all day yesterday. And so everything's been seen by everybody, even the man's home address. So like, this is not something that should have been announced to everyone, but they try to frame it in a way that makes it a negative. I'm like, this is not something that anyone should ever have to be ashamed of. And he has to explain himself in that context and be like, no, I just want to feel understood, basically. I want people to know why I am the way that I am and why I might not understand certain things. And I hate that he had to do that. Because I think so many of us can relate. And I feel like there are contexts where people do use neurodivergence or try to exploit certain conditions to excuse bad behavior that is otherwise unacceptable, right? Like, look at the Laura Owens case. Laura Owens was finally, after over a decade of abusing men and lying about medical records, caught in a court. And then she decided to go online and diagnose herself with autism and say, well, I have autism, so I'm the victim. No. Autism doesn't cause you to fake twin pregnancies for over a decade. You know what I mean? So, like, people do fake these things. People do use these things as an excuse. But for somebody who actually lives with it, one of the hardest things I would say, in my experience, having had this issue my whole life, and even somebody who's been diagnosed late in life, is feeling misunderstood and frustrated because people think that you have nefarious intentions, or they think that you're just being weird on purpose, or that you don't care about their feelings, when really you just, like, you don't pick up on things, or your brain's not really keeping up the same way that other people, you know, understand things. You're not really in tune with other people as easily as a regular person would be. I think for me, I think people can probably tell this from my streams that I get frustrated when I try to explain myself and my thoughts, and like even people in comments will say like, Warren, stop talking so much, or blah, 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 or whatever. Just read the document. I'm like, dude, stop. Like, I just want to sit here and speak freely. And my brain works that way, where I have to explain my position sometimes over and over again in kind of like a circular way. And it's frustrating for the people who listen to me sometimes, and it's frustrating for me as someone who's trying to explain it, but also understand that I'm doing my best, right? And that people sometimes misunderstand my intentions or misinterpret the way that I, said something or meant something. And it's frustrating for me because I'm like, no, I'm not a bad person, but you're making me feel like a piece of crap. You know what I mean? And so I feel like he's kind of going through this here. And so he just wanted to feel, in my opinion, in my view of reading this and having experienced a lot of this in my lifetime, he's just wanting to feel understood. He wants people to understand where he was coming from, why he might have said some of the things that he said, why he might have said something impulsively that other people would know, hey, you shouldn't say that. The thing is, some of our brains are wired in a way where we don't like get that right away, right? So it's like people speak in a way that flows. And if you're a neurodivergent person and you want to be careful to like please everybody and make sure you don't ever break any rules or anything like that, you're going to have a really hard time having a conversation, because you're going to have to, with new people, you know what I mean? Because you're going to have to sit there and think, okay, I need to make sure I'm not doing anything wrong for each individual person who talks to me, and make sure they don't misunderstand anything that I say. I think it's okay to like misinterpret cues. I think it's okay to get things wrong sometimes, or say something that's awkward, or maybe even a little out of pocket, and then to accept criticism. If somebody were to say, hey, I didn't like that you called my pants sexy, that made me uncomfortable, please don't do it again. To accept that criticism and to correct that action immediately, because you do care about people's feelings. You just don't necessarily get it right away. I think that that is the right thing to do, right? It's to hear that, accept the criticism, and do what's best for everybody moving forward in the workplace environment. So I think the weird, like, sexy pants comment, which even given the context of the film and what they're creating, is like not a big deal if you say that it made you uncomfortable and they stop, right? If it continued and repeated itself, that would be a problem. But if they said, I don't like that comment, and he stops and he apologizes and he tries to do better. Like, why are we here? Why are we here? There's some ulterior motives for this lawsuit, and it's being dressed up as sexual harassment against somebody who has a hard time defending themselves socially, because that's what's going to sell papers, right? Not even literally, but just like metaphorically or whatever. Like, that's what's going to get clicks online, is sexual harassment, is like this huge scandal, because people aren't going to click on an article from the New York Times that says, well, Blake Lively said Justin Baldoni hugged her one day on set. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be like a whole big scandal, and they have to turn it that way. And when you don't know the context of who someone is or why they did what they did and what they did after that and how it worked out, like, you don't have all that information, you can make anybody seem like this huge supervillain that the world of, unfortunately, world of women who have been abused and harassed, because many of us have a common enemy to turn against. Like, that's what they want. They want those clicks. They want that common enemy. They want that outrage. They want that, kind of even community in their corner against the person that they don't like, but it's not justified. It's not justified. And it's so much harder to come back from that when you're the person with some kind of a disability who doesn't know how to defend or explain themselves. It's so much harder to come back from that than it is to make the accusation. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, man, that's why this hits so hard. That's why some people who watched me in the beginning, who would say, that I use language they didn't like, or that they didn't understand me or my emotions, or why I was so upset about something, or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, because it's very hard as somebody who, I knew that I had ADHD from a young age. I didn't totally accept it at the time, but I wasn't diagnosed on the spectrum until a year ago, just about a year ago. And like, there were signs, and people tried to encourage me to get tested and that kind of thing. And I refused. I absolutely refused. My parents are both in psych. My dad's a forensic psych. My mom is a therapist, a psychotherapist. You can't force your family or diagnose your family, you know what I mean? And so, like, the signs were there, the questions were there, and I struggled through my whole life to understand it and how to function kind of appropriately in social settings. And I said things that people would look at me and be like, why the f would you say that? You know what I mean? Like, why would you say that? And I have wished many times in my life that I could go back and answer those questions at a younger age. But here I am now at 33. I know why I am the way that I am. And I know that I'm not perfect, and that sometimes I'm going to say things that's going to turn heads. And I know that the people who are worth having in my life are the people who will listen to me when I try to explain, like, I'm so sorry I said that, or I'm so sorry I did that. I didn't understand. I didn't pick up on the social cues that normal people pick up on. So, like, I feel bad for Justin here. And I feel bad for all of them, because their weakest moments, their very few weak moments here, are being turned into something that they're not. So, yeah. Anyways, let me take a little, oh my God. Hello, Omar. People were just asking about you. When are you going to come back? Omar hasn't been here in a minute. I am getting older. It's true. It's true. Omar is like 30 years older than me, though, so we're good. I mean, you're old when your giant goldfish start dying. You know what I mean? So, I'm streaming on this tonight. What the fuck? When? You didn't tell me that? Okay. Well, that's good. You could have invited me. I didn't invite anyone. Do you want to come in? I'll send you an email if you're free. Otherwise, let me keep reading on. So, anyways, you guys have heard my soapbox now. So why don't I just 9 p.m. means midnight for me. But yeah, I will be awake. So just let me know, because I will be awake at midnight. I have stuff I got to do. So, all right, let me get into some more of this deposition, because that's what people came here for, not to listen to me talk about my life. So, not yet. Got to feed the girls. Why don't you feed me? I'm a girl. God. Okay. All right. He says, I was never going in on a show. I think the typo there. I was never going on a show to talk about what I've been accused of. I remember specifically one being very interested in general to go on a certain show. I believe his name is Dr. Amen. And I may not be pronouncing that right, but who literally saved the life of one of my best friends. And the things that at the time I knew I was being, I don't think accused of is the right word, but I knew I had these instances that had made, as an example, Miss Slate feel uncomfortable, or at the time, Miss Lively had to do with a few instances where I made the mistake of saying something where I didn't think fully. Okay. Mr. Gottlieb says, is that something you describe of as impulsive speech? Justin says, I think it could be characterized as that, although I'm not a therapist. Right. Would it surprise you to learn that in talking with some people from your publicist team, you described going on that show of that doctor in order to discuss some of the things you had been, quote, accused of, and which in and of itself, not a problem, right? I think that's not a problem. If you're being very publicly, told to, or told that you're like a sexual predator or something like that, and you get dropped by your agency, there's nothing wrong with trying to explain yourself or trying to make people understand where you're coming from. You know what I mean? Nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but he, explains down here how that's not necessarily the case, right? He says, it would surprise me because it was not something I specifically ever said. I don't want to go on a show to discuss things I've been accused of, right? And so they continue talking about this here. He says, I never tried to go on a show specifically to discuss the things I was accused of on the set of It Ends With Us. Okay, so to answer your question, no. And I do believe the other answer to your question is that impulsive speech could absolutely be, and is oftentimes the reason for someone like myself saying something that I didn't fully think through. Right? Okay. So they're finally done with that, right? And I skipped some of that, guys. I just, picked the pertinent parts because we'd be here forever if I read every single line. There's a text here between him, Jen, and Matt Mitchell, who worked also at Jones Works, I believe. It says, this is before any of the social media, Gottlieb says, this is before any of the social media controversy about the premiere and the events surrounding the premiere had surfaced. Is that right? Okay. And he's reading a text here from Justin. It says, with everything going on, I want to have an offensive move showing my neurodivergence and some of the attributes that come with it so that I can start talking about it. Most anything that I have been accused of is social awkwardness and impulsive speech. And I think me sitting down with him and just looking at my brain and talking about some of these things will be helpful for me. First of all, helpful for him. Second of all, helpful for people to understand him. That is something that should be accepted. Something that should absolutely not be discouraged. If you have some kind of disability or disorder like that, where you have an issue and you feel like you're being misunderstood, you should be able to talk about it like that. That's something that should not be frowned upon. He's not harassing anyone by talking about his condition. He's not harassing anyone by talking about why he does the things that he does sometimes when he feels embarrassed or ashamed. Like, especially that he already apologized for the one comment he made. You know what I mean? So it's just ridiculous. But let's keep going here. Anyways, so he's not really talking about literally the accusations. He's not saying most anything that I've been accused of is social awkwardness. He's not saying anything specific about the accusations that were eventually made in the lawsuit. Okay. So what I put in quotes there is because I haven't been accused of. That's why I put it in quotes. So there was nothing I had been officially accused of, hence the need for quotation. I believe by this point I was made aware of the unfollowing, and something that I had been working on over the last year and a half in therapy was my neurodivergence and a lifetime of being undiagnosed and the suffering that comes along with that. And so what I'm suggesting here is, first of all, the Dr. Amen show had reached out to me independently, and I had been wanting to do it because it's very expensive to get the brain scan done, and they were offering it for free, number one. In some way, I think I was justifying why to do it with my team, and I also thought it would be really helpful, as I've done with everything else in my life, to use my own experiences and shortcomings, or in this case, neurodivergence, to help other people feel seen. And that's very apparent through his public talks and his books, etc. Okay, I will email you a link right now. How about that? Mm-hmm. Okay, let me email Omar a little. Tilted warrior. Okay. Where's the link? There it is. Found it. And sending now. Let me put my earphone in for when he pops up. Okay. Anyways. So he's talking about what he likes to do, his process, and how he helps people, which is to kind of share his own faults and his experiences and like his own life kind of issues to help other people, which you can definitely see that he's done through his books, his talks, etc. Okay. So yeah, would it have been helpful for me to sit down and have him scan my brain and tell me specifically what is going on? Gottlieb says, your testimony is that when you wrote this on June 24th, that when you said, most anything I've been accused of is social awkwardness and impulsive speech, you were referring to a null set. And I don't know exactly what a null set means. He says it down here. What does a null set mean? I don't understand what that means. And then he doesn't ever really explain. Justin says, I hadn't been accused of anything. There had been, if you will, allusions to things, but there has not been like an accusation of sorts, right? Gottlieb says, is what you were saying to your team here that the thing you wanted to get ahead of were insinuations about your conduct? Justin says, I think I wanted to make it very public because I had spent the last decade using the things I was struggling with to help people. I wanted to also show that I had been diagnosed as neurodivergent, and like so many people, I struggle with it, and I thought it could be really helpful to myself, but also to others. So, you know, and that's very in line with who he is and all that. So, I'm going to bring Omar in here to ask him some questions for a little bit, and then we'll kind of try to shred through the last parts of this. We're not too far from the end, so that should help. Hang on. Oh, wait, he left. Where did he go? He was right there, and he had his whole screen up and everything, and as soon as I let him on the stage, he's gone. Hang on. You disappeared. Come back. Okay. Because we have lots of questions for him. All right. Why does he have to explain anything about his neurodivergence? This is kind of what I was trying to tell people when I was talking about third-party depositions and why I was so, like, pro sealing some stuff for third parties who are true third parties who, like, have nothing to do with all this. Is, like, they can ask anything in these depositions. Like, anything. And you'll see that later on when we start reading some more. At one point, Justin is like, I'm not answering that. And Michael Gottlieb says, this is my deposition. You have to answer that. So it gets kind of crazy. But all right. Anyways, we'll keep reading until Omar comes back. How about that? Let me try to fix my little earbuds here, though. Headphones. There we go. Okay. All right. So by this point in late June, Miss Lively had acknowledged that everything on round 2 had gone perfect. We had gone through the edit. By this point, I had my film taken from me. I was excluded from finishing my own movie, not being able to sound, mix, color, even approve the final picture. The cast had begun unfollowing me, and I was told that I was not going to be sure if I was going to attend the premiere. I did not know what was possible because nobody was saying anything. It was all whisperings, and I was preparing for absolutely anything. Gottlieb says, by this point, did you understand it had been insinuated that you had sexually harassed Miss Lively or that you had engaged in sexual harassment on the set? Justin says, I never thought of the word sexual harassment. There had been insinuations of various things, but done in a way that didn't actually say anything, which is that kind of 17-point list. Hello, you're actually here this time, okay?
Hey there, young lady.
I lost a second, man. Yeah, is your camera at home?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. I saw that you were kind of... maybe it was in your office. You were picture only for a bit, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, well, I took the camera out of my work office and brought it home. And so when I was streaming over there, I was, I didn't have a camera. So therefore, I was off camera. How about that?
Gotcha. Huh.
Also, I apologize for the background. The kids are over there watching stuff.
No, it looks fine, man. I don't see anything other than like Christmassy decorations.
Yeah, this is the last week of Christmas decorations, and then they're all coming down. I have like 5 Christmas trees. They're all coming down, all of them.
No, it's still downstairs. I don't have a very big one in my house. The big stuff goes at my parents' house down the street, but mine is like, I'm not taking it down until February. So,
well, it's almost February, so
Yeah.
You're bully.
So people were asking about you. Let me ask you a question that some people have been asking me today. Yesterday, Blake's attorneys.
Michael,
Oh, hey, buddy, what's up? I haven't seen you in so long. Hi.
She's missing her front teeth.
I could see that. Yeah.
Sorry, you're asking the question?
No, yeah. So yesterday, Blake's attorneys accidentally, we don't know, leaked these full transcripts.
Nothing is accidental in this case anymore.
Right. Yeah. So they're apparently being forced into settlement talks. Next week is the oral argument on summary judgment motions. She is desperately trying to keep her deposition and everything sealed. The deadline to argue those things was on Monday. She had to make an initial motion to seal things last week. The deadline passed, and then Monday she files this thing saying, oops, we accidentally forgot to say we wanted to seal these things, and she includes these in here. And then she, for some reason, after not failing to seal anything else, these two things, Justin and Jamie's depositions in full, were the only things that they did not seal, and they released them to the public, didn't correct it for about 15 hours, and their full home addresses and everything are on there.
Yeah.
So
it seems like their MO, isn't it? It's just kind of like they seal the things they want to seal, and they don't give a shit about the things that they don't want to care about. And it's par for the course. I mean, at some point, I feel like even if Judge Lyman wants to be hands off and who cares, whatever, he's been with them this entire time, at some point, they got to face some discipline for some of this.
Well, they did file, they filed a letter about this yesterday, but it's sealed. So I have no idea what it says. I know that today he granted a motion to keep that letter sealed while they're still talking about it until the court takes further action, but we don't know what's in it. So
look, even if it was an accident, I mean, just Justin Baldoni being who he is, a person, a public figure, and accidentally forgetting to cover up his address and just putting it out there, it's at the very least, I guess at the very best, it's irresponsible, right?
Of hundreds, literal hundreds of things that they managed to keep sealed because she doesn't want anyone to see it. These were the only two things.
Of course.
And it was a week late. They filed a notice of errata, however you pronounce that. And these were the only two things in that notice that they didn't seal.
Yeah. At some point, you got to start believing it's intentional, don't you? I mean, come on, man.
I mean, I try really hard not to go there, but I'm kind of I don't see how it's not on purpose at this point.
I mean, I've been that way with you when we've talked about this kind of stuff. I've been that way with Cassidy when we've talked about stuff. Yeah. I've been the defender of Judge Lyman. Oh, leave him alone. He's just, that's not, who cares about this motion? It's not, it doesn't go to the merits, whatever, who cares? Right. But at some point, I mean, at what point do you punish the children? Stop giving warnings.
Yeah. Well, I also, a few months ago, there was an issue with Steve Sarowitz, one of the Wayfair parties. I think you know who Steve is, right?
Yeah.
So Steve had someone who was following this lawsuit set fire in front of his house to a trash can and then send texts that they were going to kidnap his daughter and tried to extort him for money. And so now Justin Baldoni just moved after he just moved, publishing his new address with his children who live at that address seems like a big deal. So
hey, bugger off.
Hey, buddy. No, it's okay. You can stay. He can go.
All right. You know what? He's going to take my spot. How about that?
Yeah.
She's got all kinds of new things to talk about, by the way. She asked me for a pregnant Barbie for Christmas.
A pregnant Barbie?
She did. She said, I want a pregnant Barbie. I didn't even know they make those, for one. And two, no, you can't have a pregnant Barbie.
Yeah.
There were many other things that they asked for.
I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. I don't think there are pregnant Barbies, right? Not yet, anyways.
You got it from somewhere.
The world is changing.
On our list of things.
Yeah. So anyways, Steve Sarowitz went through that harassment and extortion attempt a few months back, or maybe it was longer than a few months now, but based on this case, and somebody who was following the case who said, if you have all this money to pay for your defense in this case, you have enough money to pay us to not basically trap and kill your daughter or something. And so now Justin Baldoni, who just moved to a new house with his family, his wife and his two kids, has his brand new address doxed to the whole entire internet in this document. And I of course, didn't show it to anybody. I blacked it out and didn't even show the page, and I never would. But like, it took them 15 hours, I think it was 15 hours, to take it off the public docket. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time that we've dealt with this issue in this case. I mean,
right. Yeah.
I mean, the first time, I don't remember when the first time we dealt with it, but we definitely dealt with it with the content creators, you know, that whole fiasco. That was way back, like in June or July or something.
Well, everyone was pretty scared, because I know a lot of people who were included in that subpoena. I show my face and my name. I always have, but a lot of people don't. And so a lot of people were very afraid, and people made fun of them for being afraid and for like being anxious or even crying. And the thing is, look at this now. Look at where we are now. This guy's brand new address just got doxxed. And it's like, we're like, what, a year in? It's crazy.
You know, my New Year's resolution for 2026 is for the people that criticize content creators for things like not wanting to be exposed publicly like that for very good reason. For very good reasons. Yeah. All of them can suck my eggs. How about that?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
By the way, my daughters have given me, if I want to say a curse word, they've given me permission to use certain words only. If I want to use a curse word, you say, Dad, how about instead of saying bullshit, you just say sugar plums? Like, okay.
I would have picked a different word to replace sugar plums with, but that's fine. Okay.
You know what? Let them keep their innocence. Also, I don't know where you're going with that, but I like sugar plums.
I was just thinking of balls.
Totally.
That's cool. I guess it's not a swear word, so.
It is now.
Okay. Well, that song on the Korean K-pop show that they were watching when I was at your house last.
Yeah.
It's in my playlist. Like, and I always go and I pick a few songs from the last playlist to carry over to the new one, and that song goes every single time because it's like stuck in my brain. So like, I can't get that stupid song out of my head, and that is the fault of your children.
Well, thankfully, they've just now, as of December, gotten over that song. You know. And so,
well, I haven't. It's still with me.
We're done with the demon hunter phase. So how about that?
Well, I would sing it to you if I could hit those notes, but I can't. So
well, I'll do my best.
Yeah. I'm bringing it back. Maybe they'll have a different movie next time.
I've seen you in karaoke rooms, and you know, you got decent pipes.
Yes and no. That day, I disagree. I think that I was off that day. But you know, I'm not terrible.
Well, you're better than Bruce. So how about that?
Nobody's better than Bruce.
Yes, there are.
Maybe. Yeah. Anyways, we're going through this deposition because I know you only got a few minutes, so I'm trying to sum up like the major parts here. They're talking about obviously those comments that he made to Blake and Jenny about the wardrobe, where he said, "Oh, those pants look sexy," or whatever looks sexy. And they're trying to pass it off as like he made it an unsafe and hostile environment for women. I don't know how much you've seen since you last talked about this stuff, but there were other women who are mentioned in these documents and these depositions that they weren't sexually harassed in any way. There was no harassment, but they said like they didn't feel that their voices as females were appreciated to the extent that they wanted them to be, basically, in making the script. And like one of them wanted to be a director, and Justin was already the director. One of them wanted to be the sole producer, but Jamie was also there. So they basically tried to frame it as like, well, women weren't valued on this set type of thing. And I'm like, first of all, that doesn't sound like it was true at all if you really listen to what they're saying. But second, that's not a crime. Like, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. When I used to be a DHL delivery boy, I didn't feel like my voice was valued there either. And I'm not even a lady.
Yeah.
I felt like I was more sexually harassed on that job than anything that I've ever seen described on this lawsuit. Look, there's a difference between not feeling valued on set because people don't value your creative expression and not being valued enough to not be sexually harassed. The two are mutually exclusive. And so the question was not whether or not you felt like you were being valued as a person for your creative expression. The question was, were you sexually harassed to a point that rises to the level of what's beyond reasonable?
Yeah.
And nothing in the depositions that I've seen so far, and I haven't read the whole thing, but the parts that I've seen, nobody's co-signing on that, which is the point.
Yeah, my problem is that like when I read this stuff and I read those words, like what you're saying makes sense. But when I'm by myself and I'm reading this and I only have my own experience to go off of, I'm like, well, what if I'm wrong? You know what I mean? So I get very like, I don't want to be too insensitive, but at the same time, like they're saying, well, you know, sometimes they made them feel like shit or whatever. But I'm like, everyone's boss makes them feels like shit sometimes because they have to tell you what to do and you don't want to do it. You know what I mean? So,
well, there's specific times, just you and I, when we're doing videos together or live streams together, where you have made me feel like shit on accident.
Right. I always make you keep your clothes on. It's ridiculous.
I have definitely made you feel like shit on certain occasions. I don't think
not intentionally. I mean, nobody's intentionally making anyone feel like shit. Let's put it that way. But like, I guess the thing is like, they're saying he had power over them, and so they felt a certain way, and he made them feel undervalued or something. Like, you know, they didn't get the positions that they wanted. They didn't have enough influence that they wanted. Like, for example, Colleen Hoover, who wrote the book, didn't have as much say in the script as she thought she would have, I guess. And they're calling that like a hostile environment.
I'm going to tell you a story. Listen, these Hollywood types, I've been out here. I mean, I live out here, right? I've spent time in those arenas and I've been around those people. And look, they're sensitive folks over there. I mean, there's a lot. Everybody's got a script. Everybody's got ambition. Everybody has. They endeavor to do something in the entertainment industry. And there's levels to this game. You know, you don't go from like Scorsese's like at the Mount Rushmore, and then it goes down from there. And most people are down on the bottom floor. And if Justin Baldoni is responsible for some measure of production on the film, his voice is going to be here, and you're still going to be down there because you're still paying your dues. And just that's by design. But that's every organizational structure ever that's ever existed, that's ever had any measure of success. There's levers. There is levels to management, and them feeling subservient to their superiors is not the same. That doesn't equal sexual harassment. Those are two different lawsuits, and one is not even being alleged. And so therefore they might have felt sensitive. They might have felt like they weren't being heard. They might have felt they might have even justifiably felt dismissed, but they weren't sexually harassed is the point. And that's what this lawsuit is about. And so therefore I hear them. I might even agree with them in certain contexts. I just don't care. You've muted yourself.
Okay, well, so one of us had to, since you're not doing it anymore. I want to say, like, this is ridiculous because I've never been in this situation before, but I'm also thinking, like, if I came into work and my boss said, those pants look sexy on you, and it's just in the context of a regular office job, it's like, oh God, that's creepy, right? But like on the set of a movie that's full of romance and sex, when their context is you're trying to make the characters look sexy, is it really that bad? So I've been thinking about that as well. I'm kind of like, will context matter when it comes to the law in the court and all that?
Yes, context is everything. But we have something to say.
Hey, buddy. Where's your sister, man?
She's watching. What is your sister watching?
Not Demon Hunters.
Peppa Pig. All right, go bugger off. Go on. This is what I'm dealing with. By the way, genuinely on the spectrum, that one.
Oh, same.
At all. Yeah.
She beat the crap out of me, by the way, guys. If you're watching this, they both did. They wanted me to fall on the floor from their jujitsu moves, and I was like, no. Yeah.
I forgot what your question was. I was going to get started with an answer.
So I was asking, like, because in a traditional office job, if somebody says, like, your pants look sexy on you, that's weird, right? But like in a context of a film where you're producing this film about romance and sex, and the goal is to make the character look sexy, does it matter to a court and to a judge, like, or a jury, like the context of that situation, or is it all just lumped under workplace harassment no matter what the context is if that makes sense?
Is everything. Yeah, and context really informs the court about what's acceptable or what's not. Like, for example, you're on the basketball team and then somebody slaps you on the ass and says, good job. You know, you don't get just to get declared, hey, that is sexual harassment, unless like you've raised that issue and it's happened multiple times. But like an incident that's like a one-time thing and a one-off, and you address it and you deal with it. Yeah, they've actually litigated those cases. Like back in the 70s, they had these NFL cases where one guy literally brought a lawsuit because he kept getting slapped in the ass by his teammates and he didn't like it. And then he tried to do a sexual harassment thing. But in the context of a movie, people are more loose with their conduct. However, they're also contracted up to the gills in terms of, SAG standards and how they're supposed to conduct themselves, and nudity writers and all these other things. And so, the nudity writers are in place to give guidelines to what's acceptable or not. And so if Lively's claim is that what happened on set was unreasonable, she's going to have to need other witnesses to verify on that, because if she has no other witnesses and she's the only person that says that the conduct rose to a level beyond what's reasonable, and she's the only one saying that, that kind of defeats her case, doesn't it? Because reasonable people have to agree, and she's the only one taking that position. Therefore, she's inherently not reasonable. Yeah. And so, the context,
context is like the other person who would say it was reasonable is Jenny Slate, who the same comment was made, I believe, on the same day. I'm not positive though. Same comment. The outfit looks sexy. One time, right, to her, and also one time to Blake. And the goal was obviously to make the outfit look sexy for that film. And so she's trying to, I guess, tie that to like multiple women had a problem with this, but it's like literally one time. And the second that they heard about it, they apologized profusely. It never happened again. There was no issue after that. So like, it's kind of weird. But the other stuff, like with the other women and like trying to make it sound like there were a bunch of people out there who had a problem with him. It's like they were such different grievances. Like, I wanted to be the director and they said no. I wanted to be the head producer and they said no. You know what I mean? So like, it's kind of like, that's just, to me, that kind of sounds like entitlement at this point. It's like you signed up for a certain job and they said, no, you can't have a higher position for no reason whatsoever after we all established this order. And they were upset about that. I was kind of like, okay, well, that's not harassment.
Put it this way, if it was an office job and she's there doing data entry and spreadsheets all day and somebody says, hey, nice ass, or those great pants or whatever, that would probably be questioned in the context of which that happened. But like you said, if the goal is to produce a certain look, and the look by definition is sexy, sexy is not inherently like a no-no word, and so in the context, it's just weird to call that over the line. And so agreed.
Well, look, I always get uncomfortable when people call me sexy at work, but I work from home and I live alone with my dog, so it's a little more understandable, I think. So.
No, nobody calls me sexy at work ever. So.
Well, you also work like kind of in your little dungeon back there. I've seen it. So.
Yeah, it's cozy back there. I really like it.
Yeah, guys who are watching this right now, Omar got a new dog and named it Butters. And I was like, what the fuck? My dog is named Butter. Like, you can't do that. He's not here right now. He went back with my mom this afternoon, but
I had no idea that your dog's name was Butter.
Yeah. I always name him something stupid that makes you feel bad if you yell at him. You know what I mean? Like Lollipop or something. Lollipop! Yeah.
Well, when I yell at my dog, it always sounds stupid. Butters, stop it. Over there. And he snored so loud. Man, that dog. And it's too late to give him back. I can't give him back. 30 days.
No. You have so many animals in your house. If you count a fish as an animal as well.
I got 4 fish and 3 dogs.
Yeah. Some of the fish gave their lives, I guess. But
yeah, so the others can thrive. I'll tell you what, that fish tank has never been cleaner. And those fish have never been happier. The ones that are alive. So
well,
we started with 8.
At least they're happy, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, I should probably read through some of the rest of this. Let's see.
Yeah, but I'm going to let you go so I got our order at the door. I'm going to go feed the girls.
Fair enough. I mean, you probably should. Later. So they don't eat each other like the fish.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Well, let's read through some of the rest of this. I will go back and timestamp later on if you're watching this on replay so that you can skip over that conversation if you want to. I don't know why you would want to, but if you wanted to, you totally could. All right, let me keep reading. I'm going to get through the rest of this as fast as I can without skipping important stuff. So let me move these headphones real quick. Let's see. All right. So by this point in late June of 2024, did you understand that it had been insinuated that you had sexually harassed Miss Lively or that you had engaged in sexual harassment on the set of It Ends With Us? Justin says, I never thought of the word sexual harassment. There had been insinuations of various things, but done in a way that didn't actually say anything. Okay. And so they're kind of arguing over this term sexual harassment. He says the first time he ever saw it was in the New York Times. Mike Gottlieb says, I want to be very clear. The words sexual harassment never occurred to you in respect to what Miss Lively had described happened on the set until you received her complaint. Is that your testimony? Justin says, I can't say it never occurred to me. It was very clear that Miss Lively was insinuating things that came to a return to work document. But to answer your question, I can't say if I ever thought she was insinuating the word sexual harassment or not. I don't know. Do you ever recall communicating to anyone that you thought sexual harassment was being insinuated or suggested about you or your conduct? He says, I'm not sure, but I know I certainly didn't agree with or the insinuations, right? Okay. We're going to skim over here. Let's see. So they start talking about something completely ridiculous here. So Justin drinks a drink called Update. Okay, so it's like this sort of energy drink that's non-caffeinated, I think. He says, Mr. Baldoni, I think you have a drink in front of you that's a drink called Update, right? He says, yes. Justin says that he is a sponsor, or a sponsor of Update. So he says, I'm an investor in it. Okay. Have you ever done social media posts or any kind of product endorsements for that drink? Justin says, I may have done a story probably at some point. Okay. Did you ever do a story or promotion about that drink during the marketing of the film It Ends With Us? Okay, so they're trying to kind of get at here, and I'll just tell you where we're going with this, which is they're trying to say, well, you promoted your drink when marketing It Ends With Us, so why was Miss Lively getting so much criticism? Because I've already read through this, right? So he says, like, he posted a story about it. Jen drank it and said she was wired, like, just for, fun, like, I had energy, you know what I mean? So I did a story of her drinking it, right? Okay. It's a stimulant, right? Justin says it's a non-caffeinated stimulant. And you know what's funny about them, like, asking all these questions right now about this drink? As you guys have been listening to me complain about me trying to find a different drink that's not Red Bull to drink at night and hating my coffee, is that I'm probably going to try this drink now because Mike Gottlieb won't shut the fuck up about it. Okay? So, okay. Are you aware of how relentlessly Miss Lively has been savaged for promoting her hair care products during the marketing of It Ends With Us? I noticed that Mike Gottlieb, when asking this question, doesn't ask about the alcohol products that she was hawking, because that was the real issue, right? Justin says, I'm aware that's part of, I don't know if I would ever use the word savaged, but I'm assuming you mean like had negative press. Okay. Gottlieb says, have you ever commented on Miss Lively's marketing of her products during the time that It Ends With Us was being promoted and marketed? Justin says he's sure he commented on it like privately, right? I don't know if I said those words, meaning they came from me, and Gottlieb asked about saying it was tone deaf. Justin says, I don't know if I said those words or if I was repeating that's what I heard. Do you know if your team has ever criticized Miss Lively for the marketing of her hair care products during the launch of It Ends With Us? Justin says, I think they have. Okay. Mr. Gottlieb says, you thought, in fact, that Miss Lively deserved to be criticized for promoting her hair care products around the same time that It Ends With Us released, didn't you? Justin says, I don't think that's a fair characterization of what I thought. Gottlieb says, you were happy that Miss Lively was attacked for promoting her products during the launch of It Ends With Us, were you not? Justin's like, I don't think that's a fair characterization. Like, he never said he was happy about it. And then they're talking here again. Do you see the first page there? You have sent through a picture of an Update drink. And they're talking about like some story he posted. It was a social media post where he's like marketing the drink, right? But the thing is, when he's like doing a promotion of his drink on social media posts, let's read this right here first. It says, his post says, It Ends With Us movie press tour, day 1. Gotta fuel up with drink Update, right? Keeps me energized without the caffeine. The thing is, he's not making the drink the story. He's not making his hair care line or his booze brand the story. Like, he's not intertwining it with the message of the film. It's pretty fucking obvious what the difference is there. But, I guess if you're an entitled jackass who like doesn't have any sort of down-to-earth relation to normal everyday people, you wouldn't know the difference. That's just me, but, all right. So he says, At the bottom, do you see a picture of yourself there? I think I recognize that hotel. Is it a hotel in New York you're standing in? Justin says, yes, I like that hotel. Gottlieb says, you've got a very good-looking outfit on. Okay. And in the caption, there are different brands that are tagged there. Is that right? So here in this section, I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this, guys, so we don't take too long tonight. But he's saying that basically that Justin tagged different brands or, stylists or whoever in those photos for like the clothes that he was wearing, right? Those are meant to be tagged in a social media post. Yes. Okay. And then Mike says, that's pretty standard during the promotion. Well, that's fairly standard when you're wearing clothes, movie star promoting a film to let people know what brands you're wearing. Justin says, this was fairly new to me, but I believe it's standard for movie stars. Did you ever get any backlash that you can recall for being insensitive or tone deaf for promoting a drink in which you were an investor or clothing that you were wearing in connection with your promotion of the film It Ends With Us? And that, again, is where I want to come back and say the context, the way you present it is everything. If you're about to go do a press junket and you're like, I have this drink update that gives me energy and I'm, advertising this drink or whatever in a short Instagram story, fine. Okay. If you are going to market the actual fucking film about domestic violence and he was like, well, naming like the update drink flavors about the domestic abuser and being like, everyone should drink tons of update or something like that would, be linked to domestic abuse, that would be a fucking problem, right? But like the thing is, she was hawking these hair care and liquor products in a way that was unrelatable to regular people who were, the target audience of the film, who had experience with domestic violence with people who were under the influence when they abused them. Like, it's not really that hard to figure out. The difference between a non-caffeine energy drink and an alcoholic beverage named after the abuser in the film is a pretty stark contrast. Like, that's not a difficult thing to understand. Update drink is currently unavailable on Amazon and Walmart. 300 milligrams. How do you say that word? Paraxanthine, I think. No jitters, no crash, no caffeine. I have no idea. I've never had it. So, but if somebody wants to send me a link to buy it, I will fucking try it for funsies now because it's been brought up here and I had to spend my time on it. So, might as well. Okay, so. To my knowledge, I don't know if there's a direct link between the molecule paraxanthine and, comes from caffeine, and domestic violence. That's exactly what I was just saying. So I don't think there is a direct link between what I was drinking and domestic violence. So I don't believe there was any backlash from me posting one Instagram story about this drink versus Blake, who made the entire marketing of a very significant event about her alcohol brand, which she named after a domestic abuser, and domestic violence survivors didn't like that. And the thing is that they're missing here is like, this is totally irrelevant to whether, Blake's reputation should have survived this or not, because the thing is, Justin doesn't have a history of being tone deaf, racist, and sexist, and whatever else the way that she does, because she's a bigger, higher profile star who should have learned to deal with this negative backlash at a much higher and emotionally, more emotionally sound level than she has by now, because she's trying to burn the world down with a crazy ass lawsuit. It's nuts. And so he says, there's not a link between what I was drinking and domestic violence, so I don't think there was any backlash, versus Lively's alcoholic drink named after Ryle the abuser. Gottlieb says, I will move to strike that as non-responsive. Okay. Of course. My question was, did you ever get any backlash that you can recall for being insensitive or tone deaf for promoting a drink in which you were an investor or clothing that you were wearing in connection with your promotion of the film? There's a tasteful way to market these things. Regular celebrities promoting all kinds of films with all kinds of horrible, triggering scenarios in it manage to do it all the fucking time. There is a proper way to market those things, a sensitive way, a subtle way to market those things. And she just failed to do that. And they're trying to make it sound like somehow this is his fault. I don't really understand what this has to do with her backlash. You know what I mean? They're two very different people. Doesn't make any sense. All right. So here, guys. There's been like an outage for Verizon today. I don't know if you guys have Verizon, if any of you do, but my parents and I and my sister all use Verizon. So, and I'm worried that my parents don't know how to turn the Wi-Fi on their phones. So I'm like, I don't know if you're getting my text messages because they always bother me and they're not now. So, and I'm like, what's happening? Let me try to bother them for 1 second because that is disturbing to me. Oh, my mom figured it out. Okay. Okay, good. Okay. So, sorry, that was disturbing to me for a second. Anyways, they're still talking about this in the promotion of the film. And did you get any backlash? He says, no backlash for me posting update. Was there any backlash for you tagging these people? They say no. Again, I don't really understand how that has anything to do with Blake or helps Blake at all. If anything, it just goes to show how inadequate and inappropriate she was with the marketing of her products. She was too heavy on marketing herself, basically. That's not really anyone else's fault but her own. Okay. And then here, Gottlieb asked if this was gendered, right? Because he didn't get backlash and she did, I guess. And he says, I don't believe it was gendered. Okay. And then they come back from a break and he says, what character did Isabella Ferrer play? And then obviously we know Isabella played a younger version of Lily Bloom. Gottlieb says, was young Lily Bloom under the age of 18? Even though we know damn well, how old is Isabella Ferrer? Yeah. Isabella Ferrer is 25 years old. So she was 23, maybe 22 at the time of filming, right? And she was well into adulthood. So they're trying to market this as like, or not market this, but like paint this as he did ask like a minor to do sexually inappropriate things. She was 22, 23 years old, okay? The character, yes, was underage, but part of the book was their romance, the younger character's romance. So they had to show that. And I don't really feel like they did it in an overly gratuitous way because I actually watched the fucking movie, right? So what they're getting at here is ridiculous. But he says, that's what I meant. The character young Lily Bloom was under the age of 18 or supposed to be depicting someone under the age of 18. Who fucking cares? Honestly, the fact that they're harping on the fact that the character, who we all know to be a grown woman, was supposed to be under 18, right? They're trying to make it some sort of pervy ass thing. Well, good luck passing that off with every other show that has depicted, like teen sex, like Gossip Girl that Blake Lively was in when she was well over the age of 18, portraying teenage sex. You know what I mean? Portraying high schooler, younger people's sex. Like, that's not a scandal because the people in the shows, they're not actually teenagers. They're not actually children. They're not actually like 16-year-olds. They're actually like 23-year-olds. It's not that hard to understand. And if you've been in the industry for a while, like Blake Lively has, you should know that. And it's kind of embarrassing, honestly, in my opinion, that she doesn't. Or she tries to pretend that she doesn't. Especially someone who had her child say obscene sexual things about her husband and her uncle in Deadpool and Wolverine. So, like, maybe this is a little tone deaf, if you will. All right. Watch Blake in the movie Savages. I've never seen that movie, and I don't intend to at this point, so, yeah. They aren't actually having sex. Yeah, and everybody, like, every grown adult person who's watching this film with, like, a sound mind knows that they're not actually having sex and knows that they're adult actors, and that's the reason why we're able to have those things on the screen. Because if it was literal teenagers having actual sex on the screen, that would be disgusting child porn, right? And nobody wants to see that, right? So we all know that these are grown adults who are having pretend sex for the sake of art. It's not that hard to understand. And so the fact that they're kind of harping on this right now is kind of, I think they might be a little perverse, really, for like trying to make it a thing about minors when it's not. It's very creepy. It's very creepy, in my opinion. Not a good look for her. Kind of like the whole trying to make birth sexual is not a good look for her, but It never stopped them before, so why stop now, right? Okay. And they're talking about Isabella's deposition. Was Justin there? He was for parts of it. They said, do you attend the part where she testified under oath that after she and Alex Neustadter filmed a sex scene, you went up to them and said, I know I'm not supposed to say this. I know I'm not supposed to say this, but that was hot. Justin says, I heard that part. I have no memory of saying that to them. And the thing is, Isabella Ferrer, as we know, unprompted, for no reason whatsoever, sent Justin Baldoni a text message thanking him profusely for making it such a great, wonderful, safe environment for her on her first major film, for making her feel, you know, like I said, safe. She literally used those words, dude. Like saying he made her feel safe and like she could kind of like open up and do her job. I'm paraphrasing a little bit now. And she had such a great experience. And so for her to come out and say this stuff now, it's kind of, and like, oh my God, that bothered me. Oh my God, he said that and it was like so gross. What? And he's saying, I have no recollection of that. And the thing is, when you look at that text message and then you see this, it's like, you have to know that something isn't actually correct here. And it's the person who sent the text message saying what a wonderful, safe experience it was and is now complaining. Because nobody sat that girl down and forced her to send that text message saying, you made such an amazing, safe space for me. That's just how she felt. And now she's ganging up with these people who are trying to take these guys down for some reason. I don't know. Maybe she gets a cut if the treble damages from 47.1 works out. I don't know. I hope it's worth it, Isabella. Honestly. All right. If you said that, could you understand how Ms. Ferrer could be taken aback or upset by that comment? He says, as a director, I probably say go up to the actors in between scenes 100 times a day, and whatever I said in that moment was attempting to make them feel good about what they just did and comfortable. I don't think the context of the way I said it was offensive at all. So again, he's not saying I said that. He's saying, because they're asking if you said that. And he's saying, I go up to people all the time and encourage them. That wouldn't have been the context at all. So. All right. So they're asking here about the writing and Ryan Reynolds. They ask if Justin ever crossed picket lines or if anyone from Wayfair ever crossed picket lines. And basically the gist here is they said anyone who's comfortable crossing the picket line can, but they weren't forcing anyone to do it, you know, that didn't want to do it. Right. Did you ever tell Miss Abel or Miss Nathan, who were out talking to the press about Ryan Reynolds crossing the picket lines and violating guild rules, that you yourself had crossed a picket lines and violated the terms of the writer's strike? He says, I don't remember ever saying Ryan Reynolds crossed a picket line. Okay. Did you mention that to Abel or Nathan? Right. He says, I think Miss Abel was aware that I wrote, like that he wrote, Justin wrote during the strike, because Miss Abel was aware that both myself and Blake wrote. I had told her. Okay. So they're kind of getting at this thing like, why? And Ryan Reynolds, again, not a party to this case anymore. Not sure why this is relevant, but they're asking about that to try to say, like, you set Ryan up and making it sound like he did something wrong for writing during the strike when you were writing during the strike. But the issue is not necessarily that he was writing during the strike so much as that he was writing at all, number one. And number two, that he went out of his way to overwrite a female writer on a film during a strike for a project that he wasn't even a part of. So, all right. Okay. We talked a little bit earlier about the comment using the word sexy involving Miss Slate and Miss Lively, right? Yeah, because we need to talk about that some more, don't we? God. Okay. And is it correct that you made a comment that Miss Lively, her dress, I'll let you characterize it, looks sexy or hot? Justin says, no, it wasn't a dress. So I was just answering your question. Okay, how would you characterize your comment using the word sexy? He says, in a conversation where I was speaking to Miss Lively about her wardrobe as the director, I wanted to see the onesie because all the characters were wearing onesies. She had a large jacket on, and we were having a bit of a negotiation as I was trying to gently ask her to remove it. So he's trying to say, like, hey, like for this scene, maybe take it off. You know what I mean? But without being creepy. And like many conversations with Miss Lively, there's a back and forth that can go on for quite some time. And it got to the point where I believe I said to her that it looked hot. to which she replied earlier she had said she thought it was cute, and that's why she wanted to wear it. And then I had said down the line, I had said it looked hot. And she said, that's not what I was going for. And then I made a joke. I said sexy. So he was saying hot, like temperature-wise hot. And she says, that's not what I was going for. And then he goes, sexy? Like, could you say that's a little awkward? Could you say you didn't want to hear that from someone you work with? Sure. Okay, sure, you could say that. But like, that's a minimal grievance that you immediately nip in the bud, like they did, and you move on from it and it never happens again, right? But given the context of the film and the characterization of the film itself, he's trying to get her to take off this, because she shouldn't be wearing it. I think she wanted to see the onesie, right? And she had a big jacket on. He's trying to get her to take the jacket off. He says, that jacket looks hot. Basically, like, take your jacket off, because they're trying to wear onesies in the scene, right? Not with a big jacket on. And she's like, that's not what I was going for. Thinking that he was saying that she looked hot, like attractive. But he meant hot temperature-wise. And then that's awkward as hell, right? And so he says, oh, you were going for sexy? You know what I mean? Like, awkward, yes. Bad man, sue for sexual harassment, treble damages? No. That's ridiculous. This was an isolated incident that they're harping on multiple times to try to make it seem like it happened repetitively, and it didn't. Okay. So we're still talking about that there. 5 minutes later before we started filming, I thanked Miss Slate for what she said. So he's talking about how they pointed out to him, they're like, we don't like when you use that word. Okay, fine. He says, I apologize again for using the word sexy as it related to the wardrobe, right? Okay. As you should. Apologize, move on, don't do it again, whatever. So they're talking about how it was brought up here. He says, Gottlieb says, you didn't mention anything about missing the HR meeting. Did you say anything about missing the HR meeting? He says, yes, I did. In response to Jenny Slate's joke. So Jenny Slate was joking, saying, oh my gosh, you can't say that anymore. You can't say, like, women look sexy in those pants anymore. And then he jokes back and says, sorry, I guess I missed the sexual harassment meeting. Which, honestly, when I watched that clip, because they did include it somewhere, I was like, I can't even tell what they're saying. Which was really annoying to me, because the press ran with it immediately, which just goes to show you that Blake Lively's team obviously leaked it to TMZ and whoever, because you could not tell just from listening to that clip what he was saying. And the thing is, like, obviously he was responding to her joke here. Gottlieb says, did you miss the sexual harassment meeting? He says, no, that's why I made the joke, because I did not miss the sexual harassment meeting. So dumb. So dumb. Give me one sec, guys. Okay. So let's move on a little bit. Now they're talking about a text exchange between Alex and Angie. You saw one of the things they were discussing with the belief they needed new ADs. Okay. And she wasn't saying in what you just read that Miss Lively was telling her there needed to be new ADs. So basically, I guess they're trying to get at, it wasn't Blake's fault that the AD was fired, but like we know from Alex Sachs' testimony what exactly happened there. So I don't really know that this is, it's like a he said, she said type of thing. There's like 3 different stories here. And I don't ultimately think it matters that much, other than to show that Blake was trying to get her people on and get rid of everyone else from the film. Okay, let's see. Let's get through that. Some of this stuff we've seen before a lot, and like I'm trying to get through the end of this with you guys tonight, and I'll do a recap video probably this weekend for people who missed a lot of it or can't listen to me talk for this long. So I'm going to skim over some stuff that we've definitely seen a lot about before. Did you ever make jokes about being unable to make eye contact with people on set anymore? I did not. Well, dude, let me tell you, if a lady like forced me to have a meeting with her in her dressing room while she was half naked and was like, don't look at me. And I felt that uncomfortable sitting there, like trying to do the best that I could to keep moving on with my job while she forced me to have that meeting at that time. I would probably make jokes about not making eye contact with people. Shit. All right. Okay. They talk about the meeting in the trailer. Let's see. Yeah, there's not too much we need to read here. All right. Right now, I'm not asking you about what happened in the trailer. I'm asking about your recollection of the meeting you witnessed and whether this description is an accurate reflection as you sit here today of the meeting that you witnessed. Right. She says, I don't think it's fully accurate. They're still talking about these meetings between like Jamie and Lively. So we're going to skim through a lot of that. A lot of this is stuff we've read before. So at least I think it's like the same-ish. Let's see. So they're arguing about, she said, you can come in if you don't look, blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't remember exactly what was said. Okay. Mr. Baldoni, you've been handed what's been marked as Exhibit 31. Hold on. I got allergies, so my eye's watering up a little bit. Okay. I believe this is a text chain between you, Mr. Heath, Miss Abel, and Stephanie Jones. Okay, cool. And then he's sending, I guess, either a screenshot or some text describing that protections for return to production thing. Lindsay Strasberg, Miss Lively's attorney at the time, sent it to him. That was the first time he learned of it, he said. The protections to return and the grievances in that. We've heard so much about this return document that I don't want to go through it word for word tonight. Let's see. Okay, by that point in time, you were aware of and familiar with a number of concerns that had been expressed by multiple people on the set of It Ends With Us. Is that correct? He says, no, we were very surprised by that. As read, I guess Justin said, the complaints of our, oh no, this is what Strasberg, Lively's attorney, wrote. The complaints of our client and others have been repeatedly conveyed and well documented throughout pre-production and photography. Do you see that? He says, I do see that. Okay. Is it your testimony that you were surprised by that language as well? He says, I was surprised by all of it. Of course he was. And we've heard a lot about this. So again, I don't want to bother too much reading word for word through this stuff tonight. As far as it goes to the 17-point list. Do you see a reference for an intimacy coordinator being present at all times? He says, yes. And you knew Miss Lively had concerns about some of the intimate scenes. Justin says, it's an easy yes. A lot of these things are just things that are no issues. So that's just giving an example of like one of her demands for return to production was an intimacy coordinator needs to be present at all times. And he says, it's an easy yes, of course, because they were already doing that. But this document can be used later to make it look like he didn't have one in the first place, which is not true. She refused to meet with the intimacy coordinator. So that's not his fault or anyone else's for that matter. Okay. So we're going to continue skimming here. So they talk about the dance scene footage here. He says, I didn't personally have it sent out, but I agreed for it to go out, which is okay, whatever. This is after she went to the New York fucking Times. So I don't really have any sympathy for her as far as like her making false allegations about the dance scene and then somebody on his behalf releasing the video, maybe an attorney or something. I don't think that's a problem. If somebody wants to come out publicly and make these huge allegations against you that can ruin your life, you should be able to respond to that publicly in kind. Right? You shouldn't be muzzled from responding. That's insane. That just almost seems un-American. He says here, okay, so Gottlieb asks, is your testimony that everything in the dance scene was written into the script? He says, no, it's my testimony that I wouldn't qualify that as intimacy. So there was no unscripted intimacy because it wasn't really an intimate scene. And if you watch that scene, you can see that. It's still out there on the internet, so it's not hard to find out. Let's see here. We're going to skim down. All right, I'm not going to worry about that too much. We're still talking about 17-point lists here. Yeah, we don't need to read that. So they're badgering him here about Exhibit 32, which is a text chain between him and like a number of his close friends, where he's asking for prayers and support over what was going on because he was presented with that kind of 17-point list that he felt was extorting him. And I agree with that, but that's my personal opinion. So I don't really understand what the big deal with that is, but they try to harp on that a little bit. Let's see. We don't need to go through that. So they try to make it sound like, well, obviously she wasn't trying to get power over you in the studio because what she was asking for was reasonable. The problem isn't that it was unreasonable. It's that they were intentionally trying to get him to sign off on things to make it look as if he wasn't doing the reasonable things in the first place. So I'm not going to read too much of this right now because it's all kind of stuff we've heard before. All right. Okay. And they ask him, why did you feel it was appropriate to send details about all of this to a friend group that included a lot of people that didn't work for Wayfair Studios if you were so embarrassed about what was going on, if you were so anxious and ashamed? And he's like, well, I wasn't aware that there was anything in the document saying that I couldn't describe it to people, which is ridiculous. Of course he should be able to talk to his friends about that. Shannon Connolly, thank you for the $50. Thanks for doing this, Lauren. I know it's a lot and time consuming. I appreciate you. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And this does help out because I got a Pacer bill due soon for all those public documents. So, all right, let's continue skimming through this, guys. Okay. We're still talking about that meeting, which again, I feel like we've talked about this to death. I've read it all earlier today. I'm not going to bother too much about that. They're talking about Heath in the trailer, which doesn't really have all that much to do with Justin. Then they talk about that meeting in the apartment, the January 4th meeting, right? They say, would you characterize it as traumatic? Justin says, I would. I'm not sure if anyone else would. Right? They talk about the lists. And I know we've read this before with you guys in exhibits we've gone over. So they said, do you recall the words creepy or abuse being used in reference to your behavior? He says, I definitely don't remember the word abuse, but I think I remember the word creepy. Okay. Yeah. So they're just going over more of like what we've read before about the 17-point list and the meeting and blah, blah, blah. So we're going to skim through that. Okay. They're talking about Angie Giannetti's deposition. Would you be surprised to learn that Miss Giannetti testified this is the list she remembers Miss Lively sharing? And that was like the list she read off her phone, which she may have shared that list with Angie Giannetti. It doesn't mean that's the one she shared with everybody, right? The 30-point list versus the 17-point list. So there's not too much there we need to talk about because we already know that's in dispute. This is a text change with the prayers and support group that you testified about previously. Honestly, if you're having to badger someone about a text chain called prayers and support, you're kind of a dick, Mike. You're kind of a dick. So, all right. Okay, so when Mr. Wilson, one of his friends, is asking for an update, he responds, Justin says that Miss Lively conveyed he had made her feel unsafe. Justin says, essentially, that's what she said, yes. And as read, my brain was trying to defend itself when they were needing me to apologize for all the ways I have fucked up and made her feel unsafe. And that's how he felt about what they were saying to him, how they made him feel with the way that Ryan was apparently berating him. And I know we've read a lot of this deposition excerpts before. But you understood very well her to be saying you made her feel unsafe, right? He said, I understood that's what she was insinuating by reading from this list. He doesn't agree that he actually made her feel unsafe, right? Okay. You see here the word creepy and abused were used in reference to me and my behavior. Justin says yes. So they're reading off the text still. You see a little bit later, you say, unable to respond. Jamie did a beautiful job apologizing. Justin was embarrassed that he was unable to formulate the correct words to apologize and honestly felt like a bad person. Honestly, again, like I described earlier in this stream, if you're a neurodivergent person and you have a hard time processing things, because that's what that is. It's a disability when it comes to processing things, sometimes pick up on social cues, sometimes when it comes to like paying attention and not having a scatterbrain. It depends on what your diagnosis is. Like, it's not hard to believe that somebody who's neurodivergent would feel absolutely frozen and terrified in that situation, not know what to do, and just like kind of freak out. It's really not that hard to believe. Okay. Justin says, I would beat myself up a lot, clearly, which is very true from what we've read. Okay. Did it occur to you that maybe you and Miss Lively did not share the same feelings about events that you both recognized occurred? So basically trying to tell him, and in my opinion, gaslight him into thinking, well, maybe it's your fault for not interpreting things the same way that she did because you're weird, right? He says, I think I was very clear we didn't share the same feelings. My issue was the actual events themselves. Like, he doesn't think that these things happened. And by all accounts from other people who were actually there, they don't seem to have happened exactly the way she said they did. So, all right. He said he found it confusing, like what she was saying and all that. There's another text chain. Okay. In reference to Sony, you say they just want the movie to do well and they can't release a movie the star doesn't promote. So that to me obviously kind of points out that he has to appease Blake and give her what she wants or she won't promote the movie. And then Sony really cares about obviously Blake promoting the movie. So he has to kind of do what they want. It's not that shocking. Okay. They're still talking about this kind of characterization of things that happened on set by Miss Lively. Justin says she had the nuclear bomb. If she doesn't promote the movie, she can leak that I'm a bad person or she felt unsafe with me and all the stuff she has on me. Then she's the victim. It's a Taylor Swift playbook. So she can ask whatever she wants because she knows I know. And remember, this stuff was written, these texts were written like years ago, I think. I think it's been almost 2 years, maybe. Maybe. I could be wrong, but it's been at least well over a year. You know what I mean? Like way over a year. And so saying the Taylor Swift playbook thing, that was just, that's how I felt at the time. I don't really fault him for that. But he's saying basically that she has his balls in a grip, metaphorically, because he has to do what she wants. So she'll promote the film. Otherwise, she can also, you know, in addition to refusing to promote the film, which would basically ruin his biggest project ever and therefore possibly his professional life, she could also ruin his reputation if he doesn't do what she wants. So it's pretty clear why he felt intimidated by that and why they thought she was taking over the film with this. Okay. All right. I need to read that. I think when you are somebody small in the industry like myself, and you're dealing with a titan like Miss Lively and some of the most powerful people in the world, which are her best friends, and you're in the situation that I was in, I think it's very reasonable, especially at this point, to be concerned about what's possible and what's not. I was spinning at this point, and they're like trying to badger him about texts he sent to his friends when he was spinning and that kind of stuff. He says, I believe this was the biggest project we ever invested in, ever had, with a tremendous amount of money invested in, and so did Sony have a bunch of money invested in it. He had an obligation, a fiduciary obligation, and to Sony and Steve's family not to pull out of the film, because Gottlieb here is basically trying to angle him into this, why didn't you just quit or stop producing the movie if what Miss Lively was doing was so bad, right? And there's a pretty fucking obvious answer to that question. Why didn't she quit, right? Okay. See. Did it make you mad that Miss Lively had power in the context of production of the film? He says no. Do you recall ever saying, I discovered this book? He says, I don't recall. I control this film. I don't recall. And like you would think at that point they would show him a text message where he said something like that, but then they failed to do so. So I'm not really sure what the point was there. Okay, they talk about the trailer with Mr. Heath again for some reason. Justin and Jamie are talking about frustrations. They're asking about that. And then they try to pit Justin and Jamie against each other, saying, you say a series of things to Mr. Heath, and that causes Mr. Heath to get a little bit upset. And then they try to pit this against Justin and Jamie and like pit them against each other in the way that Justin is saying Jamie's always a voice of reason so he can express his genuine emotions and his anger or whatever. And then Blake's attorney is trying to say like, well, clearly he was upset with you. Wow. It's like Mike Gottlieb has never had a deep or important male friendship in his life, I guess, that he could express those kinds of emotions. I don't mean that. I mean, I'm annoyed with him because of what he's doing, but I don't know Mike Gottlieb as a human being. So maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But in doing his job, he's irritating me right now. So that's why I said that. Okay. And when you do come back, you apologize to Mr. Heath for what you were saying the night before. So like they had like a bro conversation. Justin was frustrated, having emotions. And then he comes back the next day and apologizes to Jamie for like, not even lashing out, but just like being frustrating, I guess. So they're basically complaining about a healthy male friendship where emotions are expressed and they can forgive each other and move on if they're frustrated with each other. Like, what the fuck is your problem? All right. And And then they mock him about his therapy there, that your personality is being overrun by a little boy who feels scared and threatened. Is that what you were conveying to Mr. Heath? So they start talking about what he said about his therapy and his process there, which I know I've read this part of the deposition before. It's been in exhibits. That's really sad, to be honest. Justin says he was almost texting or like watching everything with a frantic energy. It feels like a little kid. And in those moments, it feels like that boy is in charge. So he's just like deeply in touch with his emotions, trying to, in a healthy way, recognize what's going on within him when he's having this turmoil. And they're trying to make that a net negative for some reason. Well, I know why, but you know. Okay. Again, they try to pit Justin and Jamie against each other, says that feeling of the little boy was able to make you behave towards your best friend in a way that you clearly regretted the next day. Like, my God, we can all see that Justin is overly critical of himself, number one, and number two, overly apologetic. So go fuck yourself. I mean, honestly, like that is something that you should be able to do. If you make a mistake like that, you should be able to talk to your friend about it. If you have a healthy relationship, you have your emotions, you process those emotions. Sometimes you say things you don't mean, or you feel bad about the next day, and you should be able to have that kind of relationship. Not that difficult. So, okay. Let's see. Justin says he feels lucky to have that relationship where you're not judged for moments where you're oversensitive or emotional, or you can say stuff you don't mean and come back later and not be judged. That's what I meant. So obviously, again, like I said, a very healthy relationship, and it's ridiculous they're trying to pit them against each other. All right. Here they're talking about AJ Marbury, his former assistant. It says, a text here says, over the last few months, I haven't been the safest place for myself. And in that, energetically, I feel I've failed at being a safe place for others. And that was in March of 2023. So he's talking to someone from No More. I don't understand why this would apply to Blake. I guess they're trying to say that, well, if you weren't a safe place at that time when you were feeling down, is it possible you weren't a safe place for these women? Which is basically what Gottlieb's getting at here. He says, Justin says, I was being very hard on myself. As I sit here today, I read this and I feel I was disproportionately hard on myself. And I would agree from everything we've read from these excerpts. Okay. And then here they talk about that meeting where he mansplained, and they try to make that a big deal because Justin thought that he mansplained to Alex Sachs or something. It says, as we go forward, they're reading a text or a message from him. As we go forward, I'll make sure this doesn't happen again to any of the women involved in this film. So Justin, again, is being very hard on himself and says, oh gosh, I mansplained and I shouldn't have. It won't happen again. And they're trying to make that out as like something supporting an accusation of sexual harassment. Because here's what actually happened. In a meeting, you interrupted and mansplained something as it relates to abuse and data and statistics to Miss Sachs. I'm sorry. Even if that's impolite, it's not a fucking offense. Like, it's not a civil offense. It's not a crime. What is your problem? Okay. I don't know if he can answer because it's been getting me. I think I felt a lot of pressure. Okay. Just going from that. They're still bothering him about being a safe place for others. Just basically just using his therapy and all that against him. Do you recall Miss Sachs testifying about how you had yelled at her on the set at one point? Justin says, I remember her testifying that, yes. And she felt frightened by that. Justin says, I'm not sure if that was her testimony. Do you recall Miss Sachs walking off of set after that incident occurred? I do not. And that's the last thing they ask him about that, I guess. With respect to AJ Marbury, the assistant, do you remember at any point in time having Miss Marbury take a harassment prevention class on your behalf? He says no. Do you recall at any point in time that you were supposed to be taking a class? I don't. On April of 2023. Do you recall an exchange with Miss Marbury on April 2nd, 2023, in which she said, you're acing your harassment prevention class. Truly stellar job. And you responded, thank you. I'm working really hard at it. Justin says, I don't. Okay. I don't know what was going on there. Honestly, if she was taking that for him, that's a really bad look right now. I'll admit that, like, that's irresponsible because of how this can look for them right now. Does it mean he sexually harassed anyone? No. These texts also don't definitively prove anything. I don't know if she was deposed or not. I'm open to like listening to what they had to say. if that actually happened, I think that that is a poor decision on their part. But I don't have enough information to say that's definitely what happened right now, especially because that line of questioning ended right there and never came up again, apparently. So, all right. Did you suggest that Miss Lively performed the birth scene naked? No. Did Mr. Heath? No. Did anyone else? I don't know. Did you want Miss Lively to perform the birth scene without most of her clothes on? No. Did you ever tell Miss Lively that your wife ripped her clothes off during childbirth? Justin says, I do not recall a conversation where I said she ripped her clothes off during childbirth. Do you recall ever sharing any information with Miss Lively and speaking about the birth scene where you recounted information about your wife giving birth to Miss Lively? Not giving birth to Miss Lively, but wife giving birth, speaking to Miss Lively. Okay. I remember numerous conversations where Miss Lively and I were talking about our, and I don't mean my birth, but our collective births, where she shared personal information and then I shared personal information about my wife. So like they both shared information about their personal lives and all this stuff. And then she later comes back and tries to say he sexually harassed her for it when they had a pretty good relationship. And I think the reason she doesn't want people to see her deposition transcripts and her text message is that it provides the context that this was a mutual friendship. They had mutual friendly conversations, like the kind of stuff you talk about outside of work. And we know that pretty much already from what we've seen, the limited amount we've seen, where she's like using innuendo and flirty text messages to him in the middle of the night, or not even in the middle of the night, but just like using flirty text messages to him, talking about never with teeth and like stuff like that, talking about being like bantering and all that stuff. You know what I mean? I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what it said, but I remember reading it a couple times and the sentiment, you know? So I try to forget the never with teeth conversation, but I can't. So, all right. Genius 12, thank you for the $20. Gottlieb's questions are ridiculous because Justin did nothing wrong. Thank you for going over these documents. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. All right. Let's keep going, shall we? Did you ever ask Mr. Heath to share any portion of a video of his wife giving birth? I did. So they're talking about the video after the birth of his child, Justin says. So I believe there's only one I asked him to share. Okay. And your testimony is the video begins after the point the baby was born. Justin says, I haven't watched the video in years. I believe it was the birth of his daughter. And my memory of the beginning of that video is that him and his wife, Natasha, and his baby are in a birthing tub surrounded by his family. So yes, after the baby was born. Okay. Do you know how much of the video Mr. Heath showed? Justin says, I have no personal knowledge of that. Okay. Let's see. We crossed out those. What were you afraid people would infer when you and the cast did not appear together at the premiere? Justin says, I think I was afraid. What I was afraid of was I didn't know what people would infer. What I didn't know people would infer. I think the internet is a scary place. That's definitely true. And I think that what happens is when a situation is created, I believe intentionally to leave Easter eggs that someone could be amiss so that the internet can fill in the blanks. I think anything is possible. And I totally agree with that. I think the internet is a scary place. I also think it's kind of a part of life now. Literally anyone can come out and accuse you of anything, and like random people who don't like you could fill in the blanks, or like random bot accounts or the same person under different usernames can come out and say pretty much anything about you these days. Like somebody can full on launch an attack against your reputation on the internet in a way that you couldn't do in person. So the internet is very scary. The way that our world works now and how we communicate is very scary because there's honestly, I feel like less of a means of credibility when it comes to communication these days because people on the internet can be so anonymous. They can be so pretend to be someone else even, right? And they can try to hurt you with that. It's scary. And like Justin says here, I think imagination can run wild. I also think that at that point, that's where lies can be told. And I think all of that was very scary to me. And I agree with that. I mean, even on a smaller scale, I felt that. I think that many of us have, even a random run-of-the-mill social media user could have people who disagree with their opinion who would come out and attack them. Like anyone can be attacked on the internet at any time, saying things that are unverified and totally smear someone's reputation. I feel like the way that our world works right now, we don't have enough like media literacy, I guess, because a lot of us, we didn't grow up with this, right? We didn't grow up in this kind of online environment. And I'm glad that I grew up when I grew up, you know, so I got the little bit left before the internet blew up the way that it did. But, you know, I feel like there's, how do I even say this? Yeah, I don't even know if I can finish the thought I was just trying to make, but I think you guys know the point of what I was trying to say, which is we don't have a lot of media literacy that was like ingrained in us when we were growing up. The way that I hope that the current and future generations will be taught, to the point where people will just kind of believe anything. You can just say anything, be like, oh my God, I met this guy on an airplane and he, you know, is a total rapist. You know what I mean? And like a mob online would believe that, you know, because we didn't teach people to be cautious of where they're getting the information and what you believe, even if it's like in line with your bias, even if it's like you don't like that person. We didn't teach people at least in my, you know, age when I was growing up, how to look out for these things and how to find reliable information and what to trust and what not to trust. And so it's very difficult, especially for people who are, you know, I don't want to say like lower IQ, but people who are not, what's the word I want to use? Not as observant, right? It's a real problem. Okay, so anybody could say anything about anyone. Like I could go online and be like, I'm Britney Spears' new boyfriend, and here's what's going on. And there would be people out there who would believe what I was saying. You know what I mean? Because there's like the thing is, we have such a problem with that I don't know. I really truly hope that it's something that gets solved in future generations, where it's like they put more emphasis on media literacy and being safe online and what to believe online versus like dumb classes about random shit that they make you take in college. You know what I mean? Like it is what it is, but maybe I'm just rambling, but it puts power. Thank you, Spotlight Shift. It puts power in the hands of the people who are best at manipulating media. Yes. Okay. You put that way more eloquently than I did. So yeah, but that is what I'm trying to say. Yes. It's just kind of it does just kind of feel like a free for all sometimes, where everybody's attacking each other, and it's like, oh my God, there's an army on every side of every issue, and like, literally, what is the truth? So, yeah. Anyways, somebody says DoorDash girl seems to prove that point. You know, you're totally right. You're totally right, and I haven't talked about that yet on this channel, but I did see it, and that was nutty, right? Okay. Anyways, we're getting closer to the end here, guys. So let's try to make sure I stay focused. So he's talking about why he was scared of like the internet and all that. Did it occur to you that there might be a good reason why Jenny Slate didn't want to follow you on social media and didn't want to appear alongside you at the premiere? Well, how does that explain Isabella Ferreira, the rest of the cast? First of all. Second, he says, I had a perfectly fine working relationship with Jenny from the moment I was made aware that she didn't like my comment. So from that point on, we never had an issue or discussed anything. Okay. And then Gottlieb says here, did it occur to you that Isabella Ferreira might have a reason why she didn't want to appear alongside you at the premiere? And Justin says, I was very confused by why Miss Ferreira unfollowed me and wouldn't appear with me. I had no idea. And then here's what, like, this started to really piss me off. Did you ask her why? And then Justin says, I think it was very clear that when a person publicly unfollows you and also through channels tells you they don't want you at the premiere or won't attend, I think I took the hint that I shouldn't reach out to anybody to ask. That's pretty fucking obvious. Like, within that industry, follows and unfollows mean so much more than it does to regular people. And even regular people get into fights over unfollows and shit, right? Like, when I have friends unfollow me, I'm like, what did I do wrong? You know? So imagine your job depends on your public image and all that shit. Of course that matters. And so when somebody unfollows you publicly and you're in that position, you take a big hint. Hey, this person doesn't want to talk to me right now. Like, I wouldn't reach out either, especially not after I had to sign a 17-point list of demands of stuff I was already, you know, not doing wrong. And I thought that somebody was about to extort me. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't fucking reach out either. Like, everything they were doing was so bizarre. And then they badger him for not reaching out and asking. He's like, well, I didn't believe that I had, like, anything I had to say could compete with any influence that Miss Lively had. And that's totally true. Justin says, when you're dealing with arguably the most powerful couple in Hollywood with the most powerful friends in the world, mixed with someone who's extremely charming and personable and has so much to offer someone as young as her, Isabella, by that point, there was nothing I believe I could have said to her that could affect any influence that Miss Lively had on her. So I did not even try. And that's honestly fair, because what would happen if he tried? Honestly, he runs the risk of, even if politely reaching out, runs the risk of being accused of further harassment, being accused of, oh, it's a continued pattern of harassment because he said he would stop bothering us when we said we didn't like his comment that one time, and now he's bothering someone else. So, like, it's just so risky to even do that. Lauren, I unfollow you just to refollow you and screw with the numbers. Why? But I mean, thank you. Whatever makes you happy, dude. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, that's that dude. That is so sad. And then also they badger him here about, let's see. It's your testimony that you believe the reason they unfollowed you and did not want to appear with you is that they were pressured by Blake and Ryan. Is that what you believe? He says, I believe prior to meeting and working with Miss Lively, I never had anyone unfollow me or ask not to be seen in a photo with me. That's what I believe. So basically, yes, but like not really. He's not saying it that way, but he's feeling it that way, if that makes sense. Okay. Because you had never experienced that before? Are you saying you attribute the cause of the unfollowing and the request not to appear to Miss Lively? Duh, dumbass. No, that's not what he said at all. So. Okay. So here they're like, okay, so you were very concerned and afraid when all that was happening with the cast, but you didn't initiate an investigation? He says no. Instead, you retained TAG for crisis PR. He says, I would not classify it as that. So here's my thoughts on that situation, which again, they're kind of reiterating some of that stuff here. You didn't go out and give an interview and speak publicly where you said, I'm concerned there are misconceptions or misapprehensions about what has happened on set. You didn't do that, right? You didn't talk to the cast members who unfollowed you. So this is kind of like a lose-lose situation for him, where it's like, they had some sort of truce, which was shaky, very shaky at that point, at the very least, to where he's like, I don't want this drama for myself or my film, my project, my friends, my family, my livelihood. And so, like, why would he go out then and give an interview on something that most people don't know about? You know? Concerned about misconceptions or misapprehensions, and then light a fire that causes Miss Lively to come out and make all these accusations when clearly they didn't want to end up in this lawsuit, right? And why would he initiate an investigation when all the cast unfollowed him right before the premiere? Right before the premiere, where they're all going to have to try to get along with each other or be around each other. Like, do you know how much problems that would cause right then? And how awkward that would be? And then at that point, probably set people off right before, because a lot of them like haven't had any high profile gigs like that before, right before the most important premiere of their lives, like to start an investigation because they unfollowed him. Do you know how much a big deal they could make about that and be like, Justin Baldoni's an entitled brat who started an investigation because we unfollowed him. You know what I mean? Like there's so many ways that could end badly for him. Why would you do that? And at that point, they were talking about TAG, right? So he hired a crisis PR person. The investigation, any potential investigation, and crisis PR are not mutually exclusive. You can have both and probably should have both at that point. You know, after the CRD came out, they did initiate an investigation, and also they had hired crisis PR because the crisis is now. Maybe you don't want to launch an investigation right away when no official allegations have been made, when you're confused about what's going on, you're feeling in the dark because all the cast has unfollowed you, and there's a huge risk in coming out and making an interview or launching an investigation into something you don't understand yet. And like hiring crisis PR seems responsible at that point because you're being threatened with a lot. So like those two things, they can both happen, right? But you don't have to have one before the other. So, but he's saying I would not agree that I did retain TAG instead of investigating, basically. All right. As you sit here today, do you know which, if any, of the services or activities or tactics laid out in the planning documents from TAG were put into motion? Okay, he says, based on my directives, I believe Mr. Heath's was that nothing was to be put into motion. We were in a completely defensive place. Okay. Did you know that alongside Jen Abel and her team, TAG did, in fact, manage media inquiries regarding the news on background as sources familiar? And I didn't know what sources familiar meant. Apparently, it's like, you can say you heard this from a source close to the situation or whatever, I guess is what that means. I don't see any evidence here, but Gottlieb is, saying that that's what happened. So, okay. Did you have a view on whether you wanted them to be doing that? He says, yes, I did. I had a very strong view. And what was that view? He says, I didn't want them saying anything that was negative about anybody or anything. And his messages can certainly convey that, I believe. So, it's your testimony that you believe you never approved TAG or Miss Abel doing any of the things that are listed in this document, the scenario planning document. He says, I believe we started this conversation by you saying if I remembered my testimony and that I wasn't satisfied with the document. So he's saying I was not satisfied with the scenario planning document. I didn't like it. I didn't find it amazing. And there was nothing that could be approved from it. I didn't ever approve this document. Okay. So we're still scrolling down here. He says that he was very, very clear with Miss Abel and Miss Nathan that he wanted to focus on the good. Okay. They talk about that Haley Bieber article, which I know we've read that section before, so I'm not going to really go through it tonight. Let's see. Yeah, we've read that before. So the film partner with them. Okay. They're still talking about the Haley Bieber thing. Again, we've talked about that. He's saying we were in a place of defense. I was afraid. I felt I was up against Goliath, Blake and her husband, and everyone in their circle, Hugh Jackman, Sean Levy, Taylor Swift. By that point, as I testified earlier, I was essentially forced or threatened to step down off my film. I wasn't able to finish my own film, even considering it tested higher. Somehow the actress of my movie, who was not a producer, was able to take complete control of the film. By this point, Miss Lively requested that my name be removed, so I had my A Film By credit removed. Okay. So, he talks more about the cast unfollowing him, etc., etc. Let's see. I didn't know what Miss Lively or her group of powerful Hollywood elites were capable of. Okay. So I saw a message or I saw a tweet, which I did not read. And I saw that it was a celebrity woman, Haley Bieber, who had a history of bullying. And I resonated with them with the term bullying because to me, that was a true statement to what I experienced. I felt I was being very bullied. So he's telling his PR people, this is how I feel. This is kind of the thing, the defense we would need to take is that I, need to defend myself saying that I was bullied. He's saying he felt very bullied. And that's a valid thing given the way he's describing things. It's not like a random lie pulled out of nowhere in retaliation for making a sexual harassment complaint, the way that Blake Lively's trying to paint it as. He's saying, this is how I would like to defend myself, basically, if it comes to that. That's my interpretation of this. Okay. All right. They talk a little bit about the film by credit, and they argue, he tries to badger Justin about that and say, well, a film by credit has been criticized by a number of directors. But at the end of the day, the thing is, it was Justin's movie. He was the director. He basically put together the project. He was the main person in charge. If he wanted a film by credit, he should have been able to have it. And her specifically asking that it be removed matters. So they're trying to say like, well, the film by credit is criticized in your industry. It doesn't matter. If Miss Lively demanded it be removed and she was threatening to not promote the film if she didn't get what she wanted, that's what matters, right? Okay. All right. We're going to keep moving past that. Would you want, and then Gottlieb asked, would you want to have a credit that's known as the vanity credit be something you sought on a film written by Colleen Hoover with the screenplay? A woman? Screenplay written by a woman, with many women acting on it. Would you want a credit that's known as the vanity credit attached to your name? So basically saying, because all these women worked on the film, would you really want a vanity credit attached to your name? A man? Get a fucking grip, dude. If he's the director and he's in charge of the project and he did everything to get it off the ground from the very beginning, years and years prior, back to like 2019, fuck you for trying to make that a sexist thing. Jesus. It's crazy. All right. Did Miss Lively remove you from the trailer? What was related to me was that she was attempting to. Who had approval authority? Okay. What do you mean exactly? Who had authority over the trailer that was released? I believe Miss Lively. Right. You believe Blake Lively had the approval authority over the final trailer that was released for the film It Ends With Us. He says, from my understanding, in many ways, that's what she claimed in her letter to the Producers Guild of America when she was applying for that PGA credit. So, yeah. Okay. We'll probably skim that. All right. So we're getting pretty close to the end here. Okay. So they talk again about that narrative, the flipping the narrative thing that Steve said that they were trying to plan on what they could do. Flipping the narrative from the leak this morning about Ryan saying the script was a disaster and he saved the movie. Gottlieb says, I think you testified that you were unsure what the basis of the belief that Ryan had said the script was a disaster and saved the movie was. Is that right? Justin says, what I'm saying here, if I read my words, is from this leak this morning. So some sort of leak that morning to an article. Okay. Do you know the point in time at which Mr. Reynolds was alleging to have worked on or saved the script, according to what you were responding to here? Justin says, what I know is that during the premiere, Miss Lively, for some reason, offered up the fact that her husband wrote what is arguably one of the top 5 most important scenes in the film, the rooftop scene. And I believe this appeared to be PR, and that I was trying to justify or calm the backlash that was caused by Miss Lively's own words. Okay. And in response to that, you suggest on the next page over the fact they saved the script from what they think is a disaster after we had a greenlit script and was a strike basically implies they were scabs. And so he's relaying a message from Steve Sarowitz, which he explains over here, is that he was passing on a message from Steve who said, and Steve has every right to say this, they have every right to defend themselves based on what's coming out there, that they should lead the press or whoever to the fact that Ryan came out during the writer's strike and rewrote that part of the script that was written by a female. You know what I mean? And they have every right, again, to make that defense. If you're coming out there like in the middle of the premiere or like whatever and saying, well, my husband wrote this really important scene, and you're shocking the people who were actually in charge of the movie and the writer of the movie herself, they have every right to defend against that. She tries to pass everything off as retaliation when there's a very clear-cut cause for every effect. And it has nothing to do with sexual harassment. Okay. All right. Karina Abdallah, thank you for the 5. Present, I'm here, guys. Hi. Thank you for joining us. We'll be done pretty soon, guys. Sorry, it's been a long one. It's almost 2 hours. So, okay. Let's see. You've characterized these as offensive, defensive. I'm trying to. Okay, so they're saying you have absolutely no idea whether Mr. Reynolds ever said he saved the movie, ever said that the movie was a disaster that he saved. Justin says, untrue. I do know he said it. He said it at the January 4th meeting in person to my face. Okay, and did he say that in public at any time that you ever heard him say that? Justin says, I found it odd that something he said to me in a very angry, aggressive tone at a meeting in front of my partners and my best friend somehow ended up magically in the press during a time when there was supposed to be a truce as soon as his wife, Miss Lively, made him look really bad on her own. Mike Gottlieb says, it's awfully convenient that you remember that right now, isn't it, Mr. Baldoni? I don't really see how that's the case, but all right. My God. Okay. Did you ever communicate in writing to anyone at any time about the January 4th meeting that Mr. Reynolds said that? Justin says, there were a lot of things Mr. Reynolds said I never shared with anybody outside of my wife, as it was extremely humiliating, embarrassing, and traumatic to me. Right. They talk about Ryan blocking him on social media. Okay. And they're talking about Tag again. Did you ever ask Tag to boost content? I said he said he technically no, but I remember. Oh, sorry. He says he did send content to them to boost or amplify, right? But then Gottlieb says, did you know what it meant to boost or amplify? Justin says, technically no, but I remember at the time assuming it meant that the word boost is like, I'm going to give my son a boost. I'm going to help him up. So to boost, right? Okay. Do you believe the digital team you retained didn't do any actual work? Justin says, do I believe they didn't boost or amplify? I have no idea. Right. And we've seen some of the stuff he asked them to boost or amplify, which is very much oriented towards the domestic violence, survivor message of the film. So it's not really shocking. They talk about street relations here. He says, do you think Mr. Heath would spend $100,000 of Wayfarer's money paying a vendor? Street relations, that's Jed Wallace's PR company. That did nothing. Justin says, I can't speculate as to what Mr. Heath would do or would not do with $100,000. All right. So they talk about when he first anticipated litigation. He said August 2024, which is not surprising. They assumed it was a possibility, I guess, because of what was going on. Let's see. So he preserved all documents from that point on. Or no, so they're saying, did you understand after that point in time that you were required to preserve all documents concerning the litigation that you anticipated? Justin says, no. When did you understand that? I believe this last week. Okay. This last week is the first time you understood that you were required to preserve documents in this case. Justin says, yes, but I preserved them anyways. So like he didn't have anything auto-deleting at that time. What steps did you take to preserve your documents? By not deleting anything. Okay. He explains here that like he always has on emails that they never delete. He has a setting, like he specifically asks them to set a policy that says things will not auto delete. He says here that Signal, like I guess earlier they testified that he wasn't really using Signal too much, but on some chats on Signal, they were set to retain indefinitely and certain were not. He says he wanted to make sure that they were all set to retain indefinitely. So now he has set them all to retain. All right. Okay. Do you recall about when you instructed your social media team to start posting you only talking about domestic violence clips? Okay. Domestic violence and clips. I don't remember the date. Okay. It says, hey, just landed. What is the TikTok strategy? I'd like you guys to start posting me only talking about DV and clips and why this movie is so important. Does that sound like a text you would have written? Justin says it does. Again, what is so wrong with that? That is literally what they should be doing in marketing this film. Like, seriously. Do you know why you were sending that instruction? He says, because that's what I wanted. Okay. Do you recall following up with the team in a conversation about the content that you wanted posted on your social media feeds from this point forward? Justin says, I don't remember a specific follow-up. Do you recall changing your profile and putting a link to know more in your profile? Justin says, yes, I do. So Gottlieb's badgering him here about why did you do it then? Why did you do it on August 8th? He says, why didn't you do it at the start of the press junket? Okay. Justin says, I think at the start of the press junket, I had extreme anxiety because I was not welcome at my own film premiere. I was in fight or flight. And if I'm honest about some of those things, I wasn't thinking about PR strategy. I was thinking about survival. Okay. Reasonable. Do you recall asking anyone from your team around this time to go through your private DMs to look for messages? Justin says, yes. Do you recall asking them to specifically look for messages from survivors? Justin says, yes. Okay. Do you recall asking them to read and respond to some of those messages on your behalf? Justin says yes. Okay, and they did that. Do you know if messages were sent from your social media accounts to whoever was sending you messages? Okay, so Justin explains here, I asked nomore.org specifically to employ a survivor who was sensitive to this topic because I was receiving so many messages from survivors who were sharing very personal, deep, traumatic things. Survivors are reaching out to me and saying they need help leaving their abuser. I didn't feel I was qualified to answer, and I couldn't sleep at night knowing that I might ignore a message from a woman who could die if I don't respond. And one of my goals and missions that you have shown me today is that I did believe this movie, as lofty as it sounds, could save a life. And so I asked no more. We employed a survivor, and her job for weeks was just to go through my DMs and respond to women who needed help, men who were also sharing their stories, and make sure they felt seen and were able to get the help they deserved and needed. I was not qualified for that task. Okay. And they say here, Gottlieb says here, in sending those responses, did they come from your accounts? He says they did. Do you know whether those responses disclosed that you were not the one reading and responding to the messages? He says, I don't. So fair enough. Either way, like, it sounds like he was taking steps to try to help people that he wasn't qualified to help, doing the right thing, not just giving, advice willy-nilly and like trying to take all the credit and all that. He's doing the best that he can to help people that he's trying to reach with this film. So I don't fault him for that. So, all right. So we finally made it to the end of that. I guess tomorrow I'll start reading and highlighting from the Stephanie Jones attorney portion of that, which is what we saw in the beginning, where Stephanie Jones' attorneys are badgering him about being a MAGA hero. Again, I don't care what your politics are. I just think it's a little ridiculous that they're trying to paint him into a corner that way. So there was a lot of frustrating things that happened there too, but I'll try to, I don't know if I'll read it tomorrow night, but I'll definitely highlight and go through it tomorrow to try to cut it up a little bit and get to the important parts. So we'll see. All right, hang on. Let me check this out real quick. See if anybody else is doing anything at the moment. Redirects. I'm going to send you to. I'm going to send you to Hear Me Out, who's going over one of Sarah Boone's crazy prison calls. If you guys don't know who Sarah Boone is, she's the suitcase killer who, locked her boyfriend in a suitcase, like zipped him up in a suitcase and left him to die, basically, and then tried to pretend it was his fault somehow. So as soon as I end this stream, it's going to redirect you there. Please tell him I said hi, that Lauren sent you, and also send bacon and robot emojis for me. All right. I will see you guys tomorrow. I'll be streaming early, like late in the morning, early in the afternoon on Laura Owens' case. I might get to this stuff tomorrow night. It depends on how tired I am, but I will let you guys know for sure. So, all right. Thanks everyone. Appreciate it. And don't forget to hit the like button for me. It's free and it helps. So I'll see you all soon.